Like many customers, you may find yourself at a spot where you've gotten a lot of value out of the data you've prepared in Domo and are looking for ways to start delivering that data and empowering your partners and customers with the very same data that you've used. Domo Everywhere is built directly on top of the Domo platform, and it allows you to build and distribute data products right to your customers and partners. The great part about Domo Everywhere is it's using the same tools in Domo and the same data preparation in ETL that you've used to date to build these right for your customers. My name's John, and in this video, we'll walk through not only the concept of using Domo Everywhere and the various options that are there, but we'll have a step-by-step how-to type guide for actually building your first data product. We'll embed individual cards and dashboards. We'll create entirely dedicated Domo instances for your customers. We'll walk through how to manage those right from your primary Domo instance. And lastly, give you some tips and tricks along the way. First, let's walk through just the general overview of how Domo Everywhere works and how the platform can be extended to deliver these experiences right to your customers. Before we begin actually building out this example as a part of the workshop, we want to take a second to just step back and get a better idea of the whole picture for what we're building. My name is John, and I'm the Director of Strategy and Operations here at Domo. And for the last little while, I've been focused specifically on Domo Everywhere. And our vision for Domo Everywhere is to enable you to build and enhance products for your customers. We're really trying to make it so simple for you as a user to build and leverage the data that you have that you can extend the value of that out to the customers and partners that you work with day to day. We have a belief that over the next few years, non-technical users and non-technical industries will be doing this more and more. And really users that understand their business, understand their unit, understand what makes them valuable to their partners and customers, will start looking for ways to take that data that they've already collected and distribute this out. Now, some may monetize that, others won't, and it may just be a way to further increase the relationships you have with your customers. But much like how Domo empowered the business user to build analytics, we see the same opportunity happening to build full environments and full data products out to customers. Now, I've been working in product management for quite some time, and when you're starting to build your first product, it's helpful just to think about the user that you're trying to serve, ways that you will distribute that product out to them, and then as new customers come in, how you will onboard those customers. And so begin thinking about this with your data. And are you trying to serve new personas in the current market that you're working in now, or in a new market? Is it new people entirely to how you do business, or is it customers or partners rather that you've worked with a few times before? When you get those, how will you distribute that data? Is this going to be is it just reference data for those users where it's really just kind of getting something inside of an app or a portal? Or do those customers need a more fully featured environment with which to interact with the data, maybe even add in their own data and that sort of thing? All of these are really helpful to understand as you build your product to make sure it's helpful for them. But Domo and Domo Everywhere make this very simple for you to start doing the activities to serve these users. Let's take a step and just look through the overall overview of what we'll be building in the workshop. And we'll use VitalLogic as an example. And you can see we've got users of VitalLogic. They've got a portal that's already built there in the middle, and that's got all kinds of things that are there. And they want to start delivering analytics out to their customers. Some of those users, like you can see Mike and Susan, just need filtered dashboards. And so within the same portal, they would like to make it so that these users see the dashboards. Again, this might be a reference data type thing, but they want to embed that inside of that and maybe filter down based on the different region that they do sales into. You can see we've got sales examples there, or maybe that's different partners that they would be seeing filtered down. Differently though, Rachel and Samantha, they would want more fully featured data environments. And so what Domo Everywhere allows you to do is integrate, and what we'll do in the workshop here is integrate this portal into Domo so that all of this is automated, understanding the user, finding the environment or the data that they should see, and then embedding that inside of their instance. What this will look like at the end is we'll have a portal built, a user will authenticate into that portal, And then all of that information will pass to Domo, and Domo will know what to do with the calls and with the integration back to Domo to understand for the user that's logged in. First, I need to find that environment. So here it's the environment that's there in the lower right, and then embed that directly back into the same app or portal that we have built for our users. This is all really exciting because it's seamless to the user. They don't know that each user is seeing a slightly different version of the data. They don't know what's powering that data, that this full Domo platform is there behind it. And it allows you to immediately and very simply begin integrating all of the different data you've already collected and distributing that right to your customers. Now, for the purposes of the workflow here in this workshop, there are some prerequisites that we have and some assumptions that we're making. The first prerequisite is that you've downloaded the example project. And for the workshop, we're going to use an example project that we have on Domo's Domo Inc. GitHub account. If you go to Domo Inc.'s GitHub, you can see the URL is there. You'll see a project called the Domo Node Embed Filters. This is a pretty basic stripped down web application that will mimic the VitaLogic app that we saw in the example. So go ahead and download that. Next, we'll need a text editor. Choose your favorite text editor to be modifying some configurations inside of that example project. I'm typically a Mac user. I like to use Vi. That is what it is. Windows, you can use command prompt editing with inside of that. Anything you need to use the text editing to make some changes inside of the project itself is perfect. The assumptions that we're making is that you've basically already got the data, you've already got some dashboards ready to go, and you've got access to that environment. And so, especially for the workshop here, we'll have some environments for most, but if you're doing this on your primary Domo instance, what I like to do is just get some fake data from wherever you want, or just make up some data, put that into the data center, make a dashboard with some cards on it that visualize some of that data, and use those for testing to get an idea of how the overall system works. The last thing that's on here is because we are distributing data, we do need elevated access inside of the instance that we're going to be embedding content from. Typically, this is an admin role, but any role, if you have custom roles inside of Domo that has elevated access for embedding cards and distributing content is required. So if we've got the project, we've got a text editor, and we've got elevated access with data ready to go and dashboards, then we're ready to begin building out this full example of Domo Everywhere. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and get started building our first data product using that example project we had from the Domo Inc. GitHub account. You can see I've got the Domo Node Embed Filters project downloaded on my desktop. And there are a few other things that are going on the screen that we'll orient on a little bit. First, I've got my browser here, and we'll use this to authenticate into the portal and do everything we need. Then I've got a few terminal windows open that I use on my Mac to do my text editing inside the project. And you can see I'm already in that directory, the Domo Node Embed Filters directory for both of them. Inside of the Domo Node project, those are README files. So let's go ahead and open that, and we'll use this to kind of orient our steps as we're walking out the workshop. First, make sure your machine has Node installed and has Yarn installed. From each one of those websites, you can go ahead and just do that configuration. We won't spend time doing that here. It's relatively straightforward, and they've got great documentation. So now we're on step 2, where we want to locate and create that dashboard. And you can see I've already got that here in my browser. I've got a dashboard with 2 cards on it and a filter card that we're going to use to embed inside of our example project. So the next step is to embed that card using the private embed option. And so here inside of Domo, under the share menu, if I click that, there's embed dashboard. When I click embed dashboard, you'll see the modal show up, and you'll see there's a lot of different options. We'll just do the most basic for now, but just note that those options are there. And here under embed options, we're going to go from off to private. When switching, you can see there's a few things. One is it shows this share link and then embed code with the iframe. But what we need under the additional information is this embed ID. One thing to note, this 4RLK2 is the same thing that's at the end of the URL there. I just find it easier to go under the embed ID and grab it from that. Now what we want to do is go back into our example project and we want to edit the environment file to have that included. Here we'll go through step 3. In the base of the folder, first thing we want to do is just run yarn, and this sets up some configuration dependencies inside of that. And you can see I've got that done. Now what I'll do is I'm going to edit the .env file. And you can see there are a few things that are here. So the client ID, client secret, and embed ID, we're going to remove because we're going to be adding in our own values. So here, the embed ID value we want to have from the embed ID that we just copied from the modal inside of the browser. So you can see there's that 4RLK2. We put that in there. Note that the space after the equal sign is irrelevant. You can have it be directly after. You can say, so equals and then the value, whatever happens there. But this is basically the variable name and then the value for that variable. Next, there's this embed type that's dashboard. This can be either dashboard or card. Lowercase card. What we have is the dashboard, so obviously that's why we have the dashboard value there. A lot of folks use dashboards because you can use all the filters, so we typically just keep that as dashboard, but note that you can put card in as well. And next is the client ID and secret. And you may be thinking, how do I know which instance of Domo that content lives in so that I can grab the right sharing ID and then authenticate to that as well so that my dashboard is not being shared with anybody. That client ID and secret is what is helping us with that step. And to get the client ID and secret, we'll need to go to developer.domo.com. And then first we're going to click the Dev Portal Login. And this is going to ask us for what instance we want to get a developer agent or a client ID and secret against. So what you'll put is the instance name. So for me, that's Domo-DP24-template. And here, the easiest way to grab that too is you can see it's everything before .domo.com in the URL that's got that content. So the URL that's got the dashboard that you're trying to embed, grab that stuff before .domo.com, enter it here, and then click continue. If you're already logged into your instance, it'll take you right to this screen where it'll say you have not created any clients. If you're not logged in, you'll have to authenticate, easy peasy, just go ahead and do that. But what we want to do is we want to create a client. So we're going to give this client a name, so workshop node example. The description is helpful when you have multiple client IDs and secrets, just to know which one you're using or which this is for specifically, what application this is for. So we'll say used in the Domo Everywhere workshop node example. I'll go ahead and fix my typo there. And then the last thing that you'll need to do is choose the application scope. And best practice is to have only the items that are required for that client ID and secret given access. So what we'll want to do is, because this is going to be authenticating and then grabbing embedded content, we'll need to make sure it has account, audit, data, dashboard, and user, and nothing else. And when we click create, this will create a client ID and secret for us. And you can see we've got the name of that, the description of that, and then here's that client ID and secret. Easy enough. What we need to do, and you've probably already started doing this, is just copy that client ID right into our text editor where we were working before, where it says client ID. And then same thing with the secret. We'll copy that value into the client secret. From here, you can save that file and quit your text editor. And in the most basic of examples, we've just integrated everything we have in this node example with the Domo instance. So if you go back to what we were thinking before, this is the dashboard that Mike and Susan would be authenticating into that we want to embed inside of our portal. Now, to make sure that it's working and to check our work, we'll want to start up this example project. And to do that, back here in terminal, I'm going to do yarn start. And this is kind of in the README, skipping us ahead a little bit down to step 7, where it'll start this little server. So if I do yarn start, you can see that unsuccessful launch. It'll say now listening on port 3001. So what you'll do is you'll go to localhost 3001. And here you can see we've got this yarn example started. And this is this little web portal that we've built. So what I want to do is the username will authenticate as Mike. The password can be any combination of letters. We don't have this very secure, obviously. This is just this example. But you can just put in any letters, just need some letters. And then you can hit enter to log in. And you can see over here where we have in terminal, it output a bunch of messages for us just to know that it was successful. But more importantly, here inside of our project, you can see that this full dashboard is embedded right inside of the app that we've built. This is the most basic example where we're taking a dashboard out of an instance for one user, authenticating that, and then embedding that inside of the app. We can start looking at more complicated ways to configure our web server to filter out content based on the user, or even getting to the point where we can have Domo understand what that user should be seeing, and then building in that full instance of Domo and embedding that right inside of their app as well. We'll have to do a little bit of prep work before we get there, so let's do that now. So you've got your portal and you've got it already started so that you can log in as one of the example users, Mike, and we get that embedded card. Everything is working great. The next step that we want to do is to add filtering into that card. And this is where we start combining a little bit of change in the website or portal that we're building and inside of Domo. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure the website to filter this dashboard for a specific user to only show content from one of the specific columns. So to be more specific about it, here in this sales by partner, these are both powered by the same data set, but you can see that we've got this Hammer Sticks Retail, Pisgah Banjo, and Tree Purpose. Well, in our example website, we've got all of our different users that are saved within this users.js file. So here inside of my text editor, I'm going to go ahead and open that users.js, and you can see we've got Mike, and then here we have Susan. What we want to do is filter all the content so that when Susan logs in, it only shows the content for where she works, this Pisgah Banjo organization. So you can see all the way down here, there's two lines. One says filters with a blank, and in this example, this is just saying, give me everything. But this other one, it says filters, colon, and then has some values. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna uncomment out that filters by deleting those two forward slashes, and we can put them by the other filters to basically say, read this set of filters when we make a call for Susan. Now, this everything from the brackets here is the key value pairs is how we refer to it. And a lot of this would be done inside the web app or portal that you've built. And there's some other ways to do this that are a little bit more smart, like integrating with your overall identity provider. But for this, we're just using this flat users.js file. And so what we want to do is change the key value pairs so that the column, operator, and value match what we want for Susan. So the easiest way for me to get these values is if I go into the card itself in my browser, then I can go right to the retail environment, or to the data set rather, which is called retail sales. And then here is data. So here's all the data that powers that. And we can see the org name. There's all kinds of different values for this Hammer Sticks Retail. And then if we keep scrolling down, we'll get down to the Pisgah Banjo and then all the way to Tree Purpose. So what we want to do is we want to put the column, and then here we put the name of that column. So that's org space name, just like we have here. Operator in, and then the value is in this values. So we will remove this, and we want to do Pisgah-Banjo. Now, when we save this file in our text editor, let me save and quit, what we'll be able to do is log in as that user and see that being filtered automatically. We'll want to, you can see we have our environment running here. I'm in the habit of just, anytime I make a change, I will quit Yarn by just Command C or Apple C or closing the terminal. And then I'll go back and run yarn start again. So let me do that. So now it's running again, and here I'll log in as Mike, and we'll see everything is exactly the same. Mike will get all of the content that's on that because Mike's was not filtered. But if I log out and log in as Susan, remember this is the one we just set the values for, Susan logs in, and in that exact same view, the same chart, Susan's only sees the Pisgah Banjo sales and the sales by month for that organization. So you start getting a sense for how Domo allows you to pass those values into Domo and return back only what's needed and pre-filtered based on that user, just like you would see inside the app when logging directly into Domo's, the instance itself. The great thing about this is all within the portal that we have built. So Mike and Susan both log into the same URL, to the same portal, but they get a different experience based on who they are and the organizations that they're associated with. Now, we can take it to the next level of maturity and start embedding instances inside of Domo. And to do that, we'll need to configure things inside of Domo itself. Let's do that. Obviously, before we can embed an instance inside of the web application that we've made, we first need to have the instance and then populate data inside of that instance. We're going to do a few different things, and first we're going to use Domo to build this instance and configure all the settings inside of Domo so that we can then begin populating it with data and then embedding that right within the application that we've made. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we want to deliver out kind of the end state we're building toward is we want to deliver a Domo environment that's got this materials inventory dashboard that I can send out to some of my partners upstream to know how much I'm resawing of these different types of wood. The first thing we want to do is to create the instance that will then get embedded. To do so, go into the More menu in Admin, and you'll see under Domo Everywhere, there's an instance management option. If we click on that, you'll see that we have no instances and we have a button that says New Instance. I'm going to go ahead and create a new instance, and this instance name we're going to call B Tree Hardwoods. The service account email is the first email, the email account rather, with the primary new administrator that's created inside that. It's the first admin. And then the key attribute is the variable and value name that we are defining that we will pass back to route users into the correct instance. So we have the key attribute variable that will get passed with the authentication. And now we want to put in the name of the value that will go with that. So every user that has this key attribute B tree defined will get routed back into this instance. So we'll define that, we'll click Save, and Domo will now create that instance. Essentially what Domo is setting up is more of a publisher and subscriber type relationship between the publishing account that we made it from and the subscriber instance that content will get delivered down to. So here you can see we've got this new instance, and there are a few things that we need to do inside of that instance. The first thing that we need to do, and if you click into this in a new tab, this will say, hey, we're going to log you into this as a different admin. Are you okay with that? And we say, yep. And it'll launch that in a new tab. What we want to do first is we want to set up the authentication between the instance that we're in and that new instance. And to do so, we need to download the certificate and upload that. I've already downloaded the certificate from the publishing instance, and so we'll go ahead and go into that subscriber instance and upload that. Now, don't be alarmed. This version of Domo looks very different than what you're used to in that there's not a top nav or a sidebar, but it is very much the full power of Domo, and we'll talk about what's all going on here in a moment. We'll go to the upper left, and there's the menu. We'll go to Admin. And here under Admin, we'll go to SAML SSO, and we want to configure this SSO. We'll go Start Setup, Manual Setup, and there are a few things that we need to define. One is the identity provider endpoint URL, and the second is this certificate. So the certificate we've already downloaded from the publishing instance. So I'll go ahead and click the arrow and choose cert.pem and upload that. Now the identity provider URL we can find back in the publishing instance just under where we downloaded the certificate. So here we've got the embed URL for the identity broker, and we'll go ahead and click the clipboard for that to copy that value. And you can see that identity provider URL is the name of your Domo instance, .identity.domo.com. So in this case, it's domo-dp24-template.identity.domo.com. And that naming convention applies to all of the identity providers where it'll have that identity.domo.com. Once we've pasted that, we can click save, and we're getting an error message that just says, hey, when you do this, the only way you can authenticate into this instance is through that publishing account. And that's exactly what we want to happen. Our authentication will get passed through the identity provider associated with the publishing account, and then will route us back into the instance that we just created. So I'll go ahead and click save anyway, because that's what we want to do. We want to save that we've done that. So at this point, we've got the authentication set up between the two. The second thing we need to do is we want to tell our subscribing instance, this environment, that anytime it gets content from the publisher, define the settings for sharing that content. So here, we'll go to subscriptions, and under settings, you can see that the domain domo-dp24-template is already set up as a publisher that will send content down to this subscriber. If you hover over it, you can see that there's a little wrench icon. We click that and click to edit. And you can see there are a few different options that we have. One is to change the owner of all content to an owner that we prefer. This can be any user that's inside of this instance. Typically, we have this as the main admin that's there, but just note that that can be changed. The other is an optional ability to share this new subscriptions with any user that we choose or any group. So for me, I will have all content that gets sent out from this DP24 template instance shared with my default group. And so I'll go ahead and just choose that. This is customizable for each of the instances that will be publishing content. And what we want to have is some way to set up the sharing so that anytime content gets sent down, it is automatically shared with the right people. I'll go ahead and click save. And now we've got everything set up from the parent environment and the child environment to receive content. And then we can begin embedding that content inside of our web application. To do so, there's a few things that we need to do. This is now configuring the web application because Domo is all set up and ready to go. The first thing that we need to do is inside of the README, you can see a little bit further down than where we left off. We've got 4 values that we want to put into our environment file. This IDP URL, jot secret, key attribute, and mapping value. I'm going to go ahead and copy these and put them into my environment file rather. And I'm just going to format these and remove everything after the equal sign because we'll populate these with the values that we need. The first is the identity provider URL, and at this point, you're getting comfortable with that. That's right here under the embed, under routing, and then down at the bottom. We'll copy that clipboard, or click that clipboard rather, and paste that value into our env file. Second is we need something called the JWT secret, or the jot secret. And here in the same place under embed and routing, if we click the dropdown, we'll see jot secret as the authentication method and the ability to generate a secret. This will create the secret, and we can copy that and then bring it here into our environment file and paste that. One thing to note is because this is the authentication into not only the identity provider, but all subscribing instances that we've set up, is be very careful with the jot secret and save that inside of a secret server that's protected in your environment. Inside of Domo, as soon as you browse away from that view and that screen, you are no longer able to view that jot secret that we just created. You'd have to generate a new one, which would invalidate all old secrets. Third, we've got to find this key attribute, and this is the name of the variable that will get passed with the authentication. And here under mapping, so we're embed and then mapping, you can see that there's an edit button here, and we've got this key attribute. And what I typically do is I will edit this, I will put in the name of that variable. So for this case, we're going to call it the key attribute. And then I will save that, but I like to just copy it because it is case sensitive. And then we'll put that right into our .env file next to the key attribute variable there. Last but not least is the mapping value. And this is the value that gets passed to the identity provider to then know every time I see an authentication with the key attribute variable and the value that we say, so in this case, b-tree, I want to route the user to that specific instance. So we'll go ahead and put b-tree, and I've got other mapping values here to get an idea for the complexity that you can build into this, where anytime a user with different variables and different key attribute mapping values defined gets authenticated to your app, it would route to any one of these different instances. It's an incredibly powerful way to have the same web application serve the needs of multiple customers. So I've got this created. I'm going to go ahead and just save that file. And now what we can do is we can start our server again. I'll go yarn start. And with that, let me log out to start over here. With that, we can log in as a user Samantha. And now, when Samantha logs in, she'll be authenticated. That key attribute value will get routed to the identity broker. And then here, right inside our application, Samantha is seeing Domo, the full instance of Domo, embedded right inside the portal. This is incredibly cool, and we'll take a minute to just back off. And when we log out, the same thing is happening for Mike that happened before. So Mike logs in, this is one of your users, and Mike is just finding reference data about different things, about the sales through all the different channels that things are getting sold. Mike is just getting a dashboard, but again, when Samantha logs in, Samantha gets her own dedicated environment that has everything that she needs to start building very full data experiences right inside of the app that you've built for her as your customer. At this point, it's not very helpful because there's no data that's in here, right? It's just a fresh, clean instance that we created. Let's go ahead and add data into that instance for Samantha. To do so, we'll go back into Domo and we'll create publications that will get sent out to all of the subscribers that we choose. So here, under Domo Everywhere again, in the admin menu, there's publications. And what we're going to do is create a new publication by clicking that plus publication. Now, in this business, Samantha is further upstream. We're building materials. We're actually resawing lumber and selling to other providers that might be building furniture with it. And so Samantha wants to know what the materials we have are, and we can share that information, kind of what our production quantity of materials are. So we'll put production quantity, or materials quantity rather, into the name. Here we'll choose the subscriber that's going to receive that content, and we'll choose that B tree that we just created. Here we'll choose the dashboards that we want to send out to that user, or to that instance rather. And so we're going to put the materials inventory dashboard that we started looking at the beginning. It will automatically choose the data sets that we need for that. And so the dashboard materials quantity has cards powered by these two data sets. So it chooses those for us. And then last but not least, it has some data permissions that we can set up. So we're going to want to include all rows in this. But later we'll talk more about data permissions and really powerful ways that you can use the data permissions inside of Publish to simply take the data you have and deliver that out to your customers. We can see an overview of all the different content that's being set as a part of this Publish job. So you can see there's one subscriber that's receiving a dashboard powered by two data sets with two sets of permissions included in that. We'll click Save. This will create that publication. If we refresh the page, this will show up here in the Publications view. And now, because this is already done, you can see it took 2 seconds to run this. And if I go back into our environment and refresh the page, or if Samantha rather logs in again, not only will she see that full instance of Domo, but here now on the left, she'll see materials inventory that's been published out to her as a user. She has all the same power and capabilities of Domo, all the filtering, and the ability to add data inside of this application. That's what you have built for her inside of this portal. You can start getting a sense for how powerful this capability is, where not only are you able to embed content right for your users, but you're able to do so in a way that can serve each one of those users independently. Here, Samantha has that full data experience that we wanted to provide for those users, but Mike has just the reference data in a dashboard from an entirely different Domo environment that's delivered all within your app. All of this is completely transparent to the user. They don't know that they're getting Domo content. They don't know how easy it is for you to deliver that, but that's all right here inside of that. Let's talk about some common tips and tricks and some troubleshooting things that are helpful as you begin building your first application. A little bit about security and really this idea of embedding instances of Domo or individual cards and dashboards can feel a little bit daunting. Well, this too is also built right into the Domo platform where you can ensure the security and the locations that different pieces of content can get embedded. So what I want to do is we're just going to log in as Samantha here. And Samantha, she logs in and we don't see anything. And that feels different than what we were looking at before. And I want to show you what's different about that. Here inside of Domo, in the More Admin, then again in Domo Everywhere, under Embed, and then Routing, you'll see that there's this option for Embed URL. And right now this is blank, whereas previously we had this populated. What we want to do is we wanted to find a way to secure where Domo as an instance can get embedded, and that's exactly what this field is doing. So here, if we put in HTTP localhost 3001, which is the URL and the port of this the web app that we're making, we click add, and now if I go back and log in as Samantha, it will go ahead and authenticate. If you log in and you don't see anything, this is typically one of the things to look at from a troubleshooting perspective, but if this isn't defined, it will just simply not load, just like you saw. The port 3001 isn't necessary, we just have to have the URL, so make sure that that gets defined to make sure that those are the only places and those URLs are the only locations that the full instance of Domo can then get loaded in inside the application. Now, if we go back to our instance, remember we have our friends Mike, and Mike logs in, and from our instance, Mike is able to see a dashboard. And here we've got in the app, it shows that it loads that dashboard in the console. Now, we can also control where cards or dashboards can get loaded. And here under Domo, in our Domo instance rather, under More, and then Admin, there's under Network Security and Embed Authorized Domains. And this one behaves a little bit differently than the previous one. If the value is blank, then it will load anywhere. And that's why we see here in localhost, everything loads and it shows when Mike logs in. But let's say we had this inside of just any other app that we had. Let's just say, for example, Google. This is a silly example. If we define any one URL inside of this embed authorized domains, then Domo will verify that the host application or the URL of the host matches what's defined in that list. And if it's not in that list, then the user won't see anything. So here, just like before when we logged into Samantha, Mike doesn't see anything loading inside of that frame. But if we go back to the security inside of Domo, we add localhost and add that. Now it would show up, and even just refreshing the page, we can see that Mike will then get content. So you can start to get a feel for the security that's built inside the product. You can define maybe a test environment and your production environment for what will load individual cards and dashboards. You can do the same thing under More, Admin, and then under Embed and Routing. Have your test environment and your production environment to make sure that just the locations that you define will actually load the content. And if that URL doesn't show up in the list, that content simply won't load. It's a great feature from a security standpoint and a good one to keep in mind. At this point, you've built an entire web application and integrated that directly into Domo. You've made ways for users to view the content that they need from right within the application, and you can make those changes right at home in your primary production Domo environment. It's very exciting and very cool to start thinking about the ways that you can start building and delivering these data experiences out to your customers. We wanted to have a couple of things and walk through things to think about as you leave. First is just a reminder on the key attributes in routing. And this is the way that the identity provider knows who is authenticating, how they're authenticating, and then getting them to the right instance. It maps all of those pieces together based on the data that's added in with the user's authentication itself. I'm a very visual learner, and so we've built this where we looked at this earlier, where Samantha would log into the portal, and then Domo would understand who and where to route Samantha to. Well, inside of the attributes that are passed with the authentication, and you can see there's the key attribute value for this tree-purpose. That gets passed to the portal, which passes that key attribute to Domo to know, oh, this is the instance, tree purpose, that would get embedded inside of the application. And so that's really what's happening with the routing and the mapping, where the authentication has this value that maps the user to the instance that they would need to see. And then Domo does the rest to deliver that back to the user right within inside the application you've made. Now, when we were talking through Publish, we talked about the different policies that you can set on the data. And I mentioned that there's an easy way to separate out the data and secure the data as it gets deployed down to the subscriber environments. This is called dynamic PDP. And inside the Publish job, if you choose the job, you can go into all of the different preferences, and then there's the policies for that Publish task. And then here you can change and create a policy based on dynamic PDP. Now, what that's doing is, if you can imagine, there's a single data set that's got all of your data for all of your production materials in this case, but we only want to send out that data that's specific to each vendor inside of each of their subscribers. Obviously, we don't want to share the wrong data with the wrong subscriber. So that kind of leaves us with a challenge. How do we separate out that data without adding a bunch of work for ourselves and managing and maintaining, many data sets? Or how do we deliver that securely and add PDP on the subscriber so that only specific users from that customer can see data? And really, those customers may find ways, and so we kind of have that data security issue where data for the wrong customer is on the subscriber. Dynamic PDP sits in the middle of that, and really what that does is, as that large data set gets sent out to the subscribers, it actually breaks it apart into individual data sets and sends the resulting data set that's filtered at a row level down to each one of the subscribers that are defined. The cool thing about this is the workload that it requires from a setup is that in that giant data set that you already have inside of your instance, you can add each row having the appropriate target based on the column that you define here in the policy. It breaks apart that automatically. It delivers that down to those end instances using that same attribute value that we just talked about, and it ensures that data security because the resulting data set on each individual subscriber has only the data that's important for them. Now, like I said before, I've been in product management for a long time, and anybody knows this that's building anything. It's just great to know that your product is working and that you can validate the use of it and really ensure that what you've built is getting used by the users you've built it for. Inside of Domo, and when you're building products like this with Domo Everywhere, most of the ways that you find out how users are using what you've built is through card views. And so we have inside of the Domo Stats data set in the App Store a data set called usage metrics that you can use to understand how much an individual piece of content is being loaded outside of Domo. You can quickly get an idea for if you have a bunch of cards or dashboards that are loaded inside of a portal that you've made, you want to know how many times a user has gone to that portal, how long they've spent on that, what views they've had on that, and that will directly be an indicator for what is providing value to your users. More views on an individual card shows that it's more helpful for those users, and you can do that, all of that validation, right with the Domo Stats data set. Now, last but not least, things to know is everything is ready for you, and you can just go ahead and get started right in your production environment. Again, there are some safety things as you're working through and making sure you understand what's happening in public and private embedding, or in taking data sets and building those out inside a dashboard to get a feel for that and how that works as you build your application. But the Domo platform is there for you. The Domo platform is ready. And if you're on consumption pricing, everything is there and everything is enabled. If you're not, you can work with Domo. If you're not on consumption, rather, you can work with Domo to get onto that platform, get onto that model, and start using it, or begin using that in the model you're currently using and start building instances, embedding individual cards and dashboards, empowering those users upstream, and using the very same data you've built and found value in to serve the other customers that you have. We're really excited to hear about and see the things you've built, and we're looking forward to seeing how you use your data to empower your customers. Thank you so much.